My name is Jesse Haas. I am the National Director of Programs at Pet Partners. I am here to talk today about virtual visiting, and I am so glad all of you could join us. Again, I'm just looking to see that some chats are coming in so I know, or some comments so that I know I'm being heard. Oh, great. Awesome. Thank you. Hello to Karina in Reno. Wonderful. That helps me know that some comments are coming through. Well, we're waiting for more people to join this live. And just so I can get to know who is out there on the other end of this, I would love to hear from you about what kind of pet you have, meaning what species. So dog, cat, horse, guinea pig, rabbit. I would also love to hear from those of you who are registered volunteers, how many of you have done virtual visits before? So let me know that as well. And if you are willing to share, let me know where those virtual visits are taking place. You don't have to name the facility, but I would just love to hear, like, I have a dog and I have virtually visited with a local nursing home. I would just love to know what kind of experience we have out there. Hey, Patty from New York. Just waiting for some comments to come in. Well, we do that. I will say at the top of the hour right now, or it's not probably going to be a whole hour, I should say at the top of the presentation here, I do want to let you know that a lot of what I'm sharing today are tips, tricks, and ideas that have come directly from our volunteers who have done a lot of virtual visiting. I do need to give a special shout out to North Star Therapy Animals in Minneapolis. They have consistently done virtual visiting throughout the pandemic. And have taken it very, very seriously and developed a really nice professional protocol for how they do these things. And they've actually co-presented with me before on this same topic. And so a lot of what I'm sharing today either comes from volunteers or comes directly from North Star Therapy Animals. So thank you to them. The other thing I want to make sure to point out is that I am at home right now, and my kids are only in school half days. I've got a foster dog right now, so if you hear any background noise, I apologize in advance. So again, I am wanting to know what kind of pet you have, and if you are a registered team, what kind of virtual visiting you've done before. And it's okay if you haven't done any, because we're going to cover some of the basics today as well. So we've got folks from Nevada, Connecticut, Virginia, Chicagoland, New York, Reno. Great. Mostly dogs I'm seeing so far. And sounds like we've got not only some registered volunteers, but also some prospective volunteers. So welcome to you as well. We hope that you do join the Pet Partners family very soon and get out there visiting, whether that's in person or virtually. Oh, good, therapy bunnies as well. We'll be talking a little bit about some rabbit examples today, so that's great. And a horse. Yay. Okay. So let's first define this term we're using called animal-related engagement, because virtual visits are a subset of animal-related engagement. And you'll see a slide up on your screen that gives a definition of it. So go ahead and take a peek at that. But I do want to point out that we obviously know at Pet Partners that nothing can replace the impact of visiting in person. But we are built on the knowledge as an organization that the power of the human-animal bond far exceeds any single circumstance or situation, right? Including something like COVID-19. And there are going to be times like this past year where traditional therapy animal programming just isn't going to be available. And there are still creative ways in which animals can positively influence our wellness, right? And these opportunities in general can be defined as animal-related engagement, or ARE. Again, virtual visits are a subset of that, and that's where we're going to focus today. But of course, print photos, videos, even activities or games that feature an animal can, again, produce some of the benefits when people, same as when people interact with an animal, when they have those feelings or memories associated with it, even if that animal is not there in person to be petted and interacted with. There is a link on our website that contains more information about animal-related engagement. We can throw it in the comments if you want to read more. There is a public page about that. It's obvious why ARE and virtual visits have been so important during COVID-19, but I really want to emphasize right now that Pet Partners does not think that virtual visits are going to go away just because COVID may becoming more manageable, right? We believe it'll be an important offering for a long time to come. And that's because, first of all, we have a lot of facilities, that are pretty remote or don't have teams nearby. Virtual visits may be the only type of visiting they can have. Or it may be a facility that does have 1 or 2 teams nearby, but those teams can only visit once a month, and they're looking for more visits. And since virtual visits are a little bit less time consuming, right? There's no grooming required. There's no commuting required. Maybe you can get some more teams in there supplementing with virtual visits so that a facility is able to experience more. Right now, at least for the time being, if teams retire because of, well, for any reason, but maybe because the animal has aged and no longer enjoys those commutes or all of those in-person interactions that happen in person, retiring teams can stay on as a virtual team only and do some short visits as long as the animal is feeling well to do so. And of course, we do have animals that go on medical leave. Maybe they're taking a medication that disallows them from visiting. If the animal's feeling well and just can't be out in public, virtual visits could happen while that animal is taking a place for in-person visits. So again, we see this concept of virtual visiting sticking around for some time to come. I'm just taking a quick peek at the comments. Folks just sharing about their animals, love to see it. And the fact that they are virtual visiting in some places, that's wonderful too. If you do have virtual visiting experience, I encourage you as much as possible, make sure you're commenting on the slide, letting people know what you've done, how you set them up. That's mostly what I'm going to cover, but I want to hear other people's experiences as well. So we've got another slide to show you. And this is what you will see when you log into your Volunteer Center account. If you are an existing volunteer, you obviously have a Volunteer Center account. If you're not an existing volunteer, please go ahead and start an account, open an account. We'll put in a link in the comments that'll take you right to that to get that set up. When you start a Volunteer Center account, there isn't any obligation, but you get a lot of free resources and tools when you do set one up. So I encourage you to do that. First thing I want to call your attention to is the magnifying glass icon. That's our resources or a resource library. You can click on that, type in animal-related engagement. You'll get even more resources about ARE and the things you can do in that arena. Okay, we have public-facing information about that, as well as things that you can get only from your Volunteer Center account. The other thing I encourage you to search for is the word virtual. When you do that, you will get a couple of results. One is a virtual visit guide for handlers. So if you are looking for some written information about how to get these set up, that's how you're going to find it. We also have a virtual visit guide for facilities. So if you are approaching facilities and they are unsure about what a virtual visit is or why they might want to set those up, the guide will help them a little bit in that regard as well. So make sure you avail yourself of those resources. The other thing I want to point out is that whenever you log into your Volunteer Center account, you have a Pet Partners in My Area section. One of the things you can do in the Pet Partners in My Area section is search for visit opportunities that are close to you. But we also recently added, just last month, the ability to search for virtual visits. So there's a ticky box that you can tick saying, I'm also interested in virtual opportunities, and then you will get all of the results from a much wider geographic area because, of course, the beauty of virtual visiting is it doesn't have to be a facility in your area. So if you have been itching to do a virtual visit and haven't figured out how to do so, if you go to that section, you're going to find people who really want and need you to come in and virtually visit. Locally, there are some ways to find virtual visits as well. Obviously, you can talk to facilities where you already visit if you're an existing team. You can also talk to other handlers in your area. Not every handler wants to virtually visit. So maybe the places they've been going in person, they don't want to virtually visit, but they might be able to connect you with those individuals at those facilities who would help you set it up if you're the one willing to go in and do it virtually. Of course, remember, there are a lot of school districts nationwide that are certainly returning to in-person learning, but most do still have a good chunk of distance learners at every grade level. A lot of our teams who have been virtually visiting have been doing so with those distance learning classrooms. So certainly reach out to your local school district, tell them what it's all about, see if they still have distance learning classrooms who may want those right now. The reason I wanted to start with how to find a virtual visit is because as you kind of get ready to do one, set the stage and prepare, you need to know where you're visiting, who you're visiting, and what facility you're visiting at, of course, because that is going to determine a lot about how you get this set up. So once you know where you'll be visiting, you can start considering how to set up, of course. First thing to ask the facility is, what platform? Some facilities are going to have a platform they have to use. It's the only one that might be available on work computers there. If you have a choice of the platform, then of course, choose the one that feels most comfortable to you. I can tell you, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this, Zoom is the one that most folks feel really comfortable with. But there are ones like GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams. You could even use FaceTime on an iPhone as well. So decide a platform. The other thing you're going to want to talk to the facility about right away is, how many people am I visiting? Am I visiting just one person virtually, or am I visiting a group? If it's a group of people, there's even more questions to ask. Groups of people might be multiple people on their Zoom screen, kind of like the Brady Bunch tiles, right? And they're all coming in virtually, maybe from their own room, or if it's a class of students, they're coming in from their home. If it's a group visit, it may also be a situation where you and your animal are on a large screen and there's a group of people around that same screen. Or you might be visiting individually, but 3 or 4 people, where a computer cart might be moved around from room to room. So lots of different ways visits can happen. You need that information from the start, because that's going to help you determine how much time you need and how to best prepare your animal for those types of visits. And then I just want to say that you should always, when you're setting things up with the facility from the beginning, make sure they know your first visit needs to be brief. If you've never done one before, that way you know how you and your animal feel interacting in this way. Additionally, if there's any tech difficulties, of course, it's much easier to have that happen if you were only going to have a short visit to start with. I'm just going to take a peek at the comments, if you don't mind, just to make sure I'm not missing anything. So I am seeing some people asking again where to find virtual visits. So when you log into your Volunteer Center account, opportunities will be on your homepage, because when you have a Volunteer Center account, it already kind of knows who you are and where you live, because you give us that information, your zip code. So the opportunities are something you'll see on your front page. Click on it, and then you can search by virtual by clicking that ticky box that you're only interested in virtual visits. My screen's really, yep. So that orange box there on the lower left side that you're seeing on the Volunteer Center tools is where you'll find them. All right, I'm going to move on, but that's just some things to share with your facility as you are setting up your first visit. The next thing you want to think about is kind of setting the stage. What does the room look like? What are you doing in your home environment to make a good virtual visit? So first of all, I would suggest, if you have it available, you use a small room with minimal distractions. If you were to set up a virtual visit in your big open kitchen and you got family members coming in and out, that's going to be pretty distracting for the people you're visiting. You're also going to want to consider your camera level or your camera height. Actually, my dog JJ she's not virtually visiting right now, everybody. She's not on duty. There she is. But I would want to consider, where is my camera, so that if she was going to be engaging and was going to participate in a virtual visit, how could I make sure that I captured her? So consider camera level. Same thing in terms of lighting. We want to make sure that lighting on your animal is also good lighting on you. If they're at floor level, then it might be a little bit darker down there. So you're just going to want to check out your light levels. For all of these things, make sure you practice ahead of time. Find somebody who's willing to do a quick Zoom call with you using the equipment you plan to use in the room you plan to do it in, and have them tell you, how does the lighting look? Can they see your animal well enough? And just do a quick practice run. Speaking of equipment, let's talk about that. In terms of a camera, I am using an external camera right now, so I can move it around. I can change the level pretty easily. So if you have one of those available, or you're willing to purchase one, if you are going to be doing a lot of virtual visits, I do recommend them. They are not particularly expensive, but you don't need that. You can also just use the camera that's integrated into your laptop, or you can use your phone. That's totally fine. I would suggest, if you use your phone, that you might want to try a tripod. And you might be able to borrow one. Lots of people have them, but a tripod will, of course, make sure that it's still and you're not shaking around. It will also allow you to go up and down with height level on that camera that you're using on your phone. The other thing you want to consider is whether or not you're going to be doing any screen sharing during your virtual visit. I'll talk a little bit about screen sharing and some ideas for that in just a moment. But if you are going to screen share, meaning you don't just want to show yourself and your camera, but you also want to show some pictures or things like that, make sure that you know how to do that on whatever equipment you use. I find screen sharing on a phone to be incredibly difficult. So if I want to screen share, I'm going to be using my laptop. Don't forget equipment for your animal. In the room that you use for virtual visiting, you're going to make sure they have a bed, or if you want to raise their level and they're allowed on furniture, you're going to want to make sure that's available. You're also going to want to have toys, treats, anything like that that you use. Consider that equipment, of course, to be in the room and available to you. Oh, one other thing, power source. Make sure your laptop or your phone is plugged in or you have them nearby, because the last thing you want to have happen after you've gone to the trouble of setting this up is to have anything die. Okay, so that's equipment. Oh, JJ is so cute. I appreciate it. JJ is almost 9 years old, which is why she's just sleeping back there. All right, so that's equipment, setting the stage. Now when you're ready to visit, we're going to want to think, of course, about engagement. So what does a visit look like? How do you keep your pet engaged? But before you do any of that, it's really important to remember that even in an in-person visit, sometimes your animal's going to be doing exactly what JJ's doing. They might just be laying at the feet of the person you're visiting with. The person you're visiting with may not even be petting them. Sometimes in a visit, what's really interesting and helpful and healing for people is to even talk about the animal or to talk to you. A lot of times the people you visit enjoy interacting with you as the handler as much as they do the animal. So just remember, when you're conducting a virtual visit, your pet doesn't need to be doing, and making things exciting. Even having an animal in the frame and giving you something to talk about with those people or that person is enough. And then you can supplement with some more exciting things to look at or do. So with that said, knowing that the person-to-person interaction is very important, you're going to want to make sure that you come prepared to virtual visits, even more so than in-person visits, with some opening questions, because some people don't do a lot of Zoom interaction, or even if they do, it still doesn't feel as comfortable. So you're going to want to have some questions right at the top. If you're with a group, I actually recommend an icebreaker, something a little bit more formal, even if the people you're interacting with know each other. I'll give you a couple of examples. The first one actually comes from North Star Therapy Animals. That's the group I mentioned at the top who's done a number of these visits. And they recommend this icebreaker for younger participants. And they actually take, if they have a dog, 3 different tennis balls, and they'll draw emotions on them, right? So like happy face, sad face, maybe an angry face or something like that. And they'll have the kids type in the comments or say verbally, if they're able, kind of, how do you think that Fido is feeling today? And have them guess. They'll throw the balls out. The dog will bring one back. The handler will show the emotion and say, it looks like Fluffy, or Fido, I should say, is sad. Why do we think Fido might be sad today? Is that because maybe this is our last visit? Is that because he can't be there in person to get pets from you? And just start to get some conversation going that way. And of course, your animal is doing something fun for people to watch as well. You can also do icebreakers that don't actually involve your animal doing anything active. And this is a way to kind of stretch out that virtual visit, right? And what I mean by that is, if you're doing a virtual visit with a group for, let's say, 20 or 30 minutes, that can be a long time for an animal to be engaging on the screen. So if you incorporate some non-animal icebreakers in at the beginning, you can kind of save your exciting stuff for later as well. So this is where that screen sharing I talked about comes in from before. You could show some pictures of your cat from when they were a baby all through their lives, and kind of start with that, and then show your cat live. You could put up pictures that might be different dog breeds and have the people guess what those breeds are. And then, you go live and you put your pet in front of the screen and you say, and guess what breed this is. That's really fun, especially if you have a mutt or a mixed breed, and maybe you've had them DNA tested and you can share all of the 8 or 9 or 10 breeds they might be. If you have a rabbit, you could put up pictures of famous rabbits like the Energizer Bunny or Bugs Bunny and have them kind of do a trivia on famous rabbits, and then you can show your rabbit. So those are some icebreakers at the beginning just to get people kind of willing to interact via screens before you actually get your animal involved. I'm going to pause again and look at the comments and see what else is coming in. Oh, okay. So Leah shared that she's created PDF bookmarks to share with the kids beforehand. What a great idea. Leah, do you then do reading virtual visits? You can just type that in the comments. I'd love to know. Marcy shared that she uses a Shutterfly book that you put together, and you can show the dog as a puppy and other fun photos. People love to hear that. They really do. They love to hear about your animal's journey becoming a therapy animal as well, especially if you have a less common species. Like when I tell people that Pet Partners registers cats, they're always like, cats? The cats I know would never do that. And so they're really interested to hear how cats go through that process. If you've done virtual visits, please keep putting your ideas, tips, and tricks in the comments, because I'm only sharing those that I know of and I've heard. I'm sure there are endless possibilities for doing fun things. Okay, so you've done an icebreaker and you want to keep the engagement going. What are some things that you can do? Again, can't emphasize enough that if the pet is just laying there and chilling out, that's okay. You could, tell your animal's origin story and things like that. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to keep them moving all the time. If you want to give your animals something engaging to do that also doesn't require them to perform in any way, even having something like a frozen Kong there that like a dog is just so excited for can be a really fun thing to watch, and it does provide some engagement, but to your animal, it doesn't feel like they're doing anything. Of course, you can demo obedience skills. That is always a crowd pleaser. You can teach about animal care or animal welfare. Again, if you have a non-common species or a less common species, that can be really interesting. So let's say you have a guinea pig. People want to know what guinea pigs eat, what they like to snack on. You can talk about what they eat, what they snack on, what their nutritional needs are, and then you can actually feed it to your animal, and they can watch your adorable little guinea pig eat their snacks. Similarly, if you have a cat, you can talk about its grooming needs. You can show the brush. You can say why it's important to groom them. If your cat likes it, you can show it. So using your engagement also as a time to kind of educate and do things, again, that are kind of part of your animal's daily life anyway. So they're not performing. They're just doing things that you would normally do, and the camera happens to be picking it up. Of course, you could choose a toy activity or a treat activity. I know some people have put puzzle puzzle games, in front of their dog and had them solve those puzzle games on screen, and that can be really engaging as well. So those are just some ideas. Sounds like Marcy does the puzzles, puzzle mats and things like that with the dog, which makes great sense. And cupcake tins with treats hidden under. Yeah. So lots of fun things to put on screen. Just think about the fun things your animal does in their daily life and then recreate it during a virtual visit. So naturally people ask, how do I train my animal for virtual visits? And I feel like I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I can't emphasize enough that you don't have to train specific to these. However, if you really want to try some things, I have some ideas for you. The first is, of course, to train your animal for desired behavior using treats or a clicker, just the same as you would for any other desired behavior. But if you can use that, as they say, look at the camera, click, treat, that will start to create a positive association with the camera. And then you might actually be able to get your animal to look into the camera, which can be sweet and endearing for those on the other side of it. You can kind of build on that even more by having somebody, again, a friend or family member, hop on a Zoom call with you and start giving commands, obedience commands to your animal through the screen. And if your animal does it, you treat or you click. That starts to be a situation where your animal will actually take commands during the virtual visit, which is a ton of fun. Not every animal is going to be able to do that, but you can certainly try if you're up for a fun, training challenge. The last thing I want to mention is that on YouTube, they have some dog TV channels. JJ does not like watching TV. If I'm just watching a show at night, she's never going to look at the TV no matter what's on it. But she will look at dog TV because it is just so irresistible. And then again, that creates a positive association with screens to the point where if you bring your dog into the room, they're going to naturally look at that screen. So those are some ways that you can train your animal for virtual visits. And then I will say again, virtual visits shouldn't be really long. And if you keep them short and brief and doing natural everyday activities, you shouldn't have to do any excessive training for them. If anybody has done training for these types of visits, please throw it in the comments on this live. I'd love to hear it. Okay, I have one more slide and my last bit of information, and then if there's questions, I can answer those. But the last slide is really about keeping your virtual visits safe and professional. Just because these visits are happening from your home doesn't mean that we want them to come off overly casual or unprofessional. And that's just because these are facilities that we may interact with in the future in person, or we have in the past, and they've come to us, they've come to kind of expect a certain standard. So you can wear your badge. We would like you to wear your badge because it communicates your registration and the importance of your training and background, even though you're doing these visits from home. We also ask that you always arrange virtual visits through a facility whenever you're visiting on behalf of pet partners. Again, that communicates a level of professionalism when a facility and us as a service provider really are working together to bring kind of the healing power of the animal to you via Zoom or FaceTime or whatever. So going through a facility is best. There's also an element of safety there as well. If you were asked to do a virtual visit for somebody you didn't know and it was not arranged through a facility, that just opens up a number of different things that can happen that wouldn't happen if a facility was involved. If you are using a platform that also allows chat, obviously Zoom does, don't use private chat on an individual visit, of course, unless if it's just to say, can you hear me? But there shouldn't be a lot of talking going on in a private chat. If you're in a group situation, group chats are just fine because there's transparency there, of course. So if you want to get people involved in the chat, you certainly can do so as long as everybody's able to view that chat. Privacy concerns for the people you're visiting, meaning what they say is private. Obviously, that's something we talk a lot about for in-person visits, but it's really important for virtual visits as well. So if you're in a home and others are present and they're coming in and out, that's obviously sacrificing the privacy of the people who are receiving your visit. So you're going to always want to keep, that goes back to keeping distractions limited, but also just keeping other people out of the area so that what you're saying or hearing from a client is just between you and that client, that patient, that student, that classroom, whatever it is. Just a couple other things about privacy. It became really popular at certain points during this pandemic. Let me know if you've seen these, but people will be on a Zoom call, say like a Zoom Thanksgiving, and they screenshot it and they share it to social media later saying, Happy Thanksgiving from our family. And it's got everybody in their own little Zoom boxes, right? That was a really popular thing to do. Don't do that with virtual visits. Don't be screenshotting clients, patients, or students and then telling people, hey, I did a virtual visit. Similarly, you don't want to be recording these visits either. If for some reason there's a need to record it, we would want explicit written permission to record it. So some of these platforms will notify you, this meeting's being recorded. I know that happens to me all the time at work, and that's fine. I consent to it at work. That is not enough to consent for recording of a virtual visit. So if for some reason it needs to be recorded, talk with the facility, talk with pet partners, make sure that there is explicit written consent because of all of those privacy concerns that exist in these type of environments. That's everything I have to share today. I did just want to call out that in addition to a badge, Leah shared in the comments that her dog wears a scarf and a tag too during the visit. So again, that just elevates the professionalism of these visits and communicates to people that we take these seriously, whether we're in person or we're virtual or digital. I'm going to hang out here for another minute or two and see if there's any comments or questions about virtual visiting. And actually, I'm here. If you have questions about pet partners in general, for those of you who are prospective volunteers, I can answer those too. And I think there's a number of helpful links that we threw up in the comments as well, in terms of finding a volunteer center account, or creating one, I should say, how to find our virtual visit guide. If you joined us late, we do have a virtual visit guide for handlers and facilities. And you can look for those in the resource library, which you get to through your volunteer center account. And we also threw up some links about animal-related engagement. If you're really interested in the effectiveness of these types of visits, if it feels like, I don't know if I'm really doing anything helpful, read about ARE, animal-related engagement, and find out how effective it really is and how important it is. That'll help support the work that you're doing. I see a question here or what are your thoughts on including a dog that isn't a registered therapy dog? That's a great question. I mean, obviously it's happening in your home. If there's another dog present, I think that's just fine. I would not set up a visit with a facility with an unregistered dog while you're representing pet partners. An unregistered dog doesn't have any relationship to pet partners. So that feels too disconnected. But if you have another dog in the home and the dog is on screen, I think that's totally fine. In fact, it could be an interesting launching point for conversation about, I registered this dog as a therapy dog, but not this one. And here's why. Maybe the dog's too young. Maybe it needs more training. Maybe it doesn't have the right temperament. I was just sharing before I got on the call, somebody asked about my dog. I shared the fact that she wouldn't pass the neutral dog test. It just wouldn't work for her. And that's why she's not a therapy dog. And so there's just lots you can share about that and maybe how you care for them differently. It'd be super interesting to say, I spend weekly time with my therapy dog out and about in the community. We have a great bond this way. And this is the kind of relationship I have with the other dog. So I could see some interest there for sure. So questions here about getting assessed or tested or evaluated at this time. We cannot register animals right now without an in-person evaluation. That is a requirement. We are allowing evaluations to happen outdoors right now, which is helping some evaluators feel more confident holding these types of group activities. If you have a retired animal that you retired maybe because they just didn't enjoy in-person visits before, we do have the option to do a virtual only registration. And in those cases, you do not need to have an in-person evaluation, but that is only for retired or retiring teams. It's not for brand new teams who just want to come in and do virtual visiting. We haven't set something like that up yet. Yeah, and Marcy threw in a comment here too. So of course, some of you may have, a lot of our teams have multiple species in the home, and it can be super interesting to see your registered bunny interact with even if it's an unregistered dog, just to see that interspecies activity. I'm just scrolling through because a couple things came through. Somebody asked about a link where evaluations are taking place. I don't have the ability to search for it right now, but when you begin a registration with pet partners, you will see as one of your steps the evaluation. When you click on that step, it will tell you where to search for evaluations in your area. Those of you who are asking about this, I'll try to come to this recording later and send a link, or we can DM you on Facebook so we can give you a direct link to that. I just don't have it available to me right now to just put it up there so you could cut and paste it. But again, additionally, you can go into a volunteer center account, start an in-progress registration. So it would be Mike and Fluffy, and then you'll see all the steps that Mike and Fluffy need to go through. Find the evaluation step, and then that will take you to the place where you can search for evaluations. I will tell you right now that there are far fewer than we would like. If you aren't seeing one in your area after a couple of weeks of looking, please let us know. We have some ways that we are creating lists and trying to kind of group people together and get them evaluations. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. On the bottom of every single web page on Pet Partner's site, there's a contact us button. That's the best way to reach us. Let us know you're not finding an evaluation. Another piece of advice for you perspectives on the call is, even in non-COVID times, it might take a couple of months to find an evaluation, just because of our evaluators are volunteers. They don't hold them every weekend. And maybe you find one, but it's full, and so you have to wait for the next one. So I would not wait to get started and complete some of your other steps until you find an evaluation. Work on those ahead of time so that when you see an evaluation come up, you can pounce on it, take it, get evaluated, and then complete your registration shortly thereafter, if that makes sense. So we got a little off topic of virtual visits, but like I said, I'm here to help. So I think since nothing else is coming in, I am going to sign off. I want to thank you again so much for your time. And I hope that this helps those of you out there virtually visiting be even better at it and continue to provide this important service to people in your community. Thanks, and have a wonderful weekend.